My name is Vicky Bennison and I'm the creator of Pasta Grannies, and I'm an Italian resident. I bought a house here in Italy 16 years ago now. So I also got married to an Englishman, so I divide my time between here and London. The Italian food culture is special to me because it's the most wonderful variety of foodstuffs, and the emphasis on quality and the local emphasis on all these different beans that you can find, for example. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different varieties of beans, and so that means there'll be different pasta variations around all of Italy, which I love discovering as one of my favourite combinations to film is pasta and beans. Pasta Grannies in Italy is seen rather differently to the rest of the world because they think it's rather strange that you would be interested in their nonnas. They think, well, everybody knows that this is a great recipe, and it's been handed down through the generations, and there's the assumption, I think, that actually it's going to continue, and they haven't actually thought about how it's going to continue as a tradition. So Pasta Grannies has made national headlines, but it's usually with the angle of, aren't these funny, these peculiar foreigners going around Italy and filming our grandmothers. Having said that, there are quite a few Italians who really appreciate it and then ask the question, why isn't it an Italian actually doing this? Why is it an English woman filming Italian grandmothers? And the answer to that is, I think Italians are so passionate about their food and the food of their particular area. They don't really get the time to examine everywhere else in Italy. So you can show a video to a grandmother of something that's being made in Calabria to a Ligurian, and they'll kind of go, I haven't seen that before. So that's great, it's good fun. Social media, of course, means everybody can make a comment. Which is great, and it's very nice to actually have people's opinions on what is being made, and the main thing that comes across is actually everyone loves grandmothers. They love pasta, of course, it has universal appeal, but what they really, really love is the grandmothers. And I always say it's like a virtual warm hug watching the videos. That's not what I actually set out to do, it's just the way that it's turned out. And I think people find it very comforting, particularly during the pandemic. They sort of turn to Pasta Grannies as a bit of escape, if you like, and a bit of comfort. So finding the grannies is pretty much a full-time job these days. And to help me do that, I have a granny finder. Her name is Livia De Giovanni. She lives in Faenza, which is in Emilia-Romagna. And she and I sort of work together. I say, Livia, let's go to Abruzzo. And she'll kind of roll her eyes and go, oh, the pastas down there aren't as interesting as the pastas in Romagna, where she comes from, because she's Italian and she's very, very sort of pro her own region. So I say, no, we're going to Abruzzo. And so we'll kind of I'll look at the pastas that I want to film. We'll think about who we already know in Abruzzo. And then we'll work through various organizations to see who they recommend. And we always work through the families, actually. We don't often see them in front of camera, but there are always family in half the village behind the camera. And so it's, our grandmothers don't ever volunteer themselves. It's usually someone else in the family who agrees that they should share it. So in a way, our grandmothers are self-selecting. The ones that feel very shy won't say yes in the first place. And we have even gone to the front door and the granny has changed her mind. So we don't force our grannies into doing it. So we always get the most wonderful, sort of outgoing, adventurous, if you like, women opening their doors to total strangers. So that's very brave of them as well. In terms of social media and grandmothers, they aren't very savvy. themselves, but they do have grandchildren who are very savvy, and they are rather thrilled to discover that their grandchildren now perceive them in a rather different kind of way because they've become YouTube famous. So that's fun, and I think how they are seen off social media is one of pride, because they see it in community terms that this is an ambassador or a representative, if you like, of their cooking. So there's that feeling, I think, of we're finally on the map. So our grandmothers are very open and generous with their recipes. There isn't something like, oh, this is my recipe and it's a secret and I'm not going to let you know. I think they're just very joyous about sharing. They're sometimes slightly surprised because they've been making it for the last 70 years. So it's like, it's a bit like, you know, the British have baked beans on toast and it's a great comfort food and you don't really think about it. And then someone comes along and says, my goodness, baked beans on toast. So it's sort of that kind of dissonance. It's like, really? This everyday food? You think it's so special? And so we have to go, yes, it is. People always ask me about, you know, who are my favourite grannies? And I say that's like asking who is your favourite child. And I love them all. I'm particularly admiring of all the women we managed to interview who are over 90, because their stories are always so incredibly interesting, and you know, the sort of the adversity that they've experienced in their youth is extraordinary, and so it's difficult to actually single out particular grandmothers. I very much enjoyed Giuseppa in Sardinia, who was a tailor, but she specialised in men's traditional costume. So it wasn't any old dress or anything, it's these beautiful sort of embroidered and elaborate waistcoats and that kind of thing. And she loved it so much she wasn't interested in getting married, and unusually didn't get married until she was about 30. And she then went on to have 4 sons, and she continued to sew for all her family, even the men's underwear. So she's kind of now in her mid-90s and can still fit into the wedding coat that she made for herself. She's refashioned it twice, and it's now a little jacket. And there she is, still wearing clothes from 70 years ago, 60 years ago. So I think that's a wonderful story. We can sort of all learn from her. I do make pasta myself, and I'm not an ambitious pasta maker. I really enjoy just sort of knocking up some tagliatelle, for example, which is the ribbon pasta. Not too thick, it's that one, it's quite nice. And like everyone, I do have packets of pasta in the larder. And I think the experience of filming grandmothers is that I've got much more demanding of the type of pasta that I buy. I don't buy the cheapest, I buy a good quality one. I know I'm lucky enough to know the manufacturers. So, you know, there's for example, you know, Pasta Mancini grow their own wheat, which I love. I like that storytelling around it, for example. I mean, there are lots of other brands that are great too. Raviolis tend to be most commonly a ricotta filling, for example. Yesterday we had a fun one which was a mixture of cheeses and mortadella ground up and then smeared across the pasta sheet, and then another layer of pasta on top, and then you create little diamond shapes, and they're called sfoglia lorda, dirty pasta, because it's only a small amount of filling that's gone across it. And that's great and quick and fun to do. And my personal favourite, I have to say, is from here in Liguria, and it's panzotti, which means the word is actually derived from belly button or something like that. And so they're little bulbous ravioli that are filled with foraged herbs, and they're served with this walnut and garlic sauce, a sort of pesto sauce, which is absolutely fantastic. How do pasta grannies measure is through eye, and that's only because they've been doing it for decades. How do we translate that is through experience. And so they would never know that, to make a successful egg dough needs around 51% hydration. They would laugh at you because they are so familiar with how the dough should feel and how it changes through, the summer and the autumn, and the dough does react differently in different temperatures and humidity. It's just an instinct for them, whereas for the rest of us, we have to kind of go back and weigh it out and sort of watch the dough, see how it's behaving, that kind of thing.